I begin by clarifying that this will be a bit lengthy. I also apologize for my English, it is not my native language and I am using a translator to provide some context. I, a 16-year-old woman, have a 12-year-old brother who is autistic, level 1. I say the point of son, not because I have given birth to him, or anything similar, but because I have been responsible for raising and educating him since I can remember, to the point that I see him as my son. Regarding my parents, I cannot really say that they are bad parents. It could simply be said that they are absent in the matter of raising children, especially my mother, who was the caretaker of that when she decided with my father that she would be a housewife. When I was 8 and my brother was 4, it was discovered that he had autism, and my parents did not take it well. My mother fell into depression and now only had eyes for my brother, as she considered and considers him her special child. My father was always more fair on this issue, as he had suffered from the favoritism that my grandmother had towards my uncle and did not want to repeat patterns, but he had to work a lot and hardly spent time at home. Anyway, as my mother went through that depression, she abandoned me. She did not kick me out of the house or anything like that, she simply disappeared from my upbringing and care completely. My older sister, who was 14 at the time, was a depressed girl, sunk in her own world. I love her more than anyone, as she became my mother without it being her responsibility, and she was not very good at it, but she took care of me more than anyone else did. My life changed a lot being a child, and I had to become independent and mature at a young age. I learned to cook and take care of myself and of my sister, who never learned to do household chores. My mother became obsessed with my brother's autism and, after a few months, recovered from her depression, but now she only talked about autism. I did not exaggerate that you could not talk about anything with her, as she always returned to the topic of autism. I learned that I could not count on her again, and because of that, I suffer from abandonment trauma. However, despite being absolutely obsessed with my brother and his autism, she never returned to being present in his upbringing. I suppose she no longer saw him the same way and now did not know how to reprimand him, or even tell him that something was wrong. As a young child, it was not very noticeable, as they were just tantrums and whims. He was a spoiled child, and I really suffered a lot from the evident preference that existed, but with a lot of effort, I managed to overcome it. When my brother was around 8 years old, and we were in the pandemic, he started consuming very misogynistic and sexist content. He really didn't know he was consuming it. They were horrible speeches presented with memes and drawings. I began to notice the fruits of that consumption in a child. He yelled at me, my mother, my sister, and any woman he interacted with. I hated that he behaved that way, and I talked to my mother about it. My mother never said anything and just stared at her phone and then changed the subject. However, I decided to take action when one day he raised his hand to my mother. Since I know about technology, I decided to put security systems on his phone to put content filters and such. I mentioned it to my parents, but they really didn't care. As time went on, my brother stopped being that way. I had to constantly scold him, but I managed to make him a respectful and kind child. I admit that I made many mistakes. I am a person who is too much of a joker, and many times I went overboard with playing pranks on my brother. I don't justify myself, but I was a child too. I know I could have done better, and probably caused him traumas. I hate myself for that. As time went on, I managed to mature more and started consuming content on respectful parenting. I started applying it with my brother, and it was really going well. I reached a point where my brother only respected me. He also respected my sister, but she left the house as soon as she could. I don't blame her. So now there were four of us in my home. My mother noticed that he only respected me, but she still never tried to be present in that aspect. My brother did not respect her and never followed simple orders she gave him, like washing the dishes he had used, so I always had to intervene to tell him the same order my mother gave him, except that he would listen to me. Sometimes, in fits of rage due to his autism, he would yell at my mother, and I had to reprimand him and try to explain to him why he should respect his mom. It wasn't easy. At that point, must have been 14 years old, and I even disliked myself. I constantly scolded him and gave him lectures. He was growing up, and I knew he thought things like, "She's not even my mother, why does she want to be scolding me all the time?" But what could I do? Most of the time I went to scold him, because my mother asked me to, since he only respected me. This started to affect me, as he would yell things at me in fits of rage like, "I hate you, leave me alone already." I loved him as if he were my son, and those comments hurt me more than you can imagine. It stressed me a lot, as I was raising a 10-year-old child at 14. I decided to go to my sister, and she told me that I couldn't keep carrying so many responsibilities that weren't mine. I knew that, but now I didn't know how to get out of there. At 15, I decided to start doing it, and with a lot of work, I finally started being a normal teenager who didn't have to raise anyone. I left that to my mother, hoping she wouldn't ruin my hard work raising him. But she was not present for him, and he became a different person over the months. Now, with me being 16 and him 12, he is a completely different person. I don't know how to explain it. I know he's going through puberty and all that, but he no longer respects anyone. Many times he starts yelling at me when he disagrees with me, whether it's about video games or absurd things. He yells at me, and no one has ever yelled at him. He goes to a very good school, and my family has never been like that. I don't know where he learned these things. He is also in that period where boys explode their sexuality. I really hadn't noticed it until one day he asked to borrow the bathroom in my room. I assumed someone was in the main bathroom, only I have my own bathroom. He often asked to borrow it, so I didn't think about it and told him yes. He was taking a long time, and I needed to wash my underwear that was lying around in the bathroom. To be honest, I'm not a very orderly person, and I always leave my underwear on the bathroom floor when I shower. It's my bathroom, and you could say it's my safe space. Every 10 minutes, I asked him to get out because I really needed to wash. After 40 minutes, I got tired and went to talk to my mother. I told her he wasn't coming out of the bathroom, and she told me he was starting that age. I started putting the pieces together, and it makes me sick and nauseous just to think about it, but I think he uses my underwear for, you know what. Whenever he asks for my bathroom and there's nothing lying around, he doesn't take long, but when there is, he takes too long. These and other sexual attitudes he has started to have. The other day, we were going as a family to a restaurant, and we passed by a bar known for how they dress their waitresses in a provocative way. He immediately got upset and started yelling that he wanted to go there. My father just laughed, and I was more and more surprised at how he was changing. Today, talking to my father, the topic of my brother and his new interests came up. My father jokingly said that my brother was very morbid. He was in his room completely silent, apparently listening to everything, and after that comment, he burst out laughing. My father also laughed, and after talking more about the topic, my father said that if God lends him life, he is going to take my brother to a nightclub, or basically to strippers. I immediately went out and said no, and my brother from afar yelled that he did, enthusiastically. I couldn't believe it. My child, whom I had raised to respect women, now wanted to consume services where the woman was a sexual object. Don't get me wrong, I don't see anything wrong with a woman dedicating herself to that. What I see wrong is the fact of supporting such a sick network, and I wish it were just that, but there is also the fact that he treats me horribly. He treats me as if I were stupid and annoying, and maybe I am, but I don't like the way he treats me. Every time I try to tell him how much it hurts me the way he treats me, he just looks at me with a cold expression, without saying absolutely anything. I tell him I'm talking to him, and please answer me. He doesn't, and when after insisting a lot he responds, it's to yell at me. Every time he treats me that way, it hurts me. I hate myself for feeling this way, but I feel like slapping him every time he does it. I try to understand that it's because of his age, but I also had that age, and I never treated anyone that way. I've already talked to my mother about it, and she just tells me to leave it alone, and that it's a stage, but what if it's not? I'm terrified that he'll still be the same way when he grows up. I don't like the way he is currently. It disgusts and repulses me. And I know this could be normal between siblings, but we are common siblings who hate and disrespect each other. We weren't like that at least. I've been going to an all-girls school since I was 12, so I really don't know how men behave at that age. That's why I'm asking for help. If anyone knows if these attitudes are normal and if there's anything I can do to prevent him from becoming worse. I feel like this is my fault for leaving his education to my mother, but if there's something I can do to fix it, I need to know.